Be warned, this video will contain spoilers. Watson has been an interesting take on the Sherlock Holmes mythology, and episode 8 continues that trend, though not necessarily for the better. The show has often walked the fine line between being a fresh adaptation and leaning too much into the legacy of Arthur Conan Doyle's original stories. This episode, however, stumbles into the latter, using familiar characters to drive the narrative rather than allowing Watson and his interns to shine on their own. From the moment Irene and Angus arrive at the clinic, Watson is immediately drawn into their mystery, and it doesn't take long for him to conclude that Angus must be Sherlock's son. Irene's carefully worded stories about Angus' late father, along with the child's medical issues, push Watson to consider the genetic implications of Sherlock's supposed paternity. But this is where his emotions cloud his judgment. The idea that his best friend might have left behind a child pulls at Watson, making him susceptible to manipulation, something Shinwell is quick to point out. Irene Adler has never been trustworthy, and the fact that Sherlock never knew about Angus is a glaring red flag. The show does attempt to justify Watson's willingness to believe Irene's claims by tying it back to his own past. Last week's episode revealed a personal backstory that makes Watson more sympathetic to the idea of a woman hiding a pregnancy. It's a clever way to add depth to his motivations, but it also highlights how much of this episode's emotional weight is placed on his shoulders rather than the supporting cast. The interns are split into teams to investigate Irene's claims, with Darian and Stephen skeptical while Lubbock and Adam lean toward belief. But their individual dynamics and interactions remain surface level, leaving them feeling underdeveloped. As the episode progresses, Irene and Angus integrate themselves into Watson's life, making it harder for him to remain objective. Their presence in his home blinds him to the truth, but it also allows him to notice small inconsistencies in Irene's health. These details eventually lead him to uncover her true motives. The twist that Angus isn't actually sick and that Irene orchestrated everything to obtain Sherlock's DNA is an interesting one, but it feels predictable in execution. The moment Watson sends Shinwell to England to track down Mycroft Holmes, it becomes evident that Irene is playing a long game. The final act moves quickly as Watson pieces together the truth. Irene and Angus attempt to flee with Sherlock's DNA, but Watson is able to intercept them thanks to Shinwell's foresight in placing a tracker on Irene. In their confrontation, Irene finally reveals her real motive. She has been diagnosed with multiple myeloma and orchestrated the entire scheme to ensure Angus would be cared for after her death. This revelation adds an emotional layer to her deception, but it doesn't change the fact that she manipulated Watson's emotions for personal gain. Still, in a moment of compassion, Watson offers to get her into a treatment program in Texas and agrees to become Angus' guardian if she doesn't survive. Despite the emotional stakes, episode 8 ultimately feels like a step backward for the series. The Irene Adler storyline, while serviceable, is overly telegraphed, making it easy to predict where the episode is headed. It also disrupts the momentum that had been building, particularly after last week's shocking ending involving Darian and Moriarty. Instead of continuing that compelling thread, the show shifts its focus to Sherlockian connections that, while interesting, don't add much to the show's original elements. One of the biggest frustrations with this episode is how little it does to develop the interns, who are supposed to be a crucial part of Watson's world. There are small moments, like Lubbock reconnecting with her artistic ex, Darian's concerns about intern relationships, and Adam and Stephen's privileged backgrounds, but none of it feels significant. These moments feel like filler rather than meaningful character development, which is disappointing given how much time the show has spent establishing them. What did you think of Watson Season 1, Episode 8? Did the Irene Adler storyline work for you? Or do you think the show should focus more on its original cast? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.